This is Jonathan Armstrong, and you're listening to the FCPA Compliance Report.
This is Tom Fox, and you are in for a treat today because we have our annual, semi-annual, demi-annual, or at least every once in a while, joint session of the FCPA Compliance Report and Great Women in Compliance, GWIC. And I have Lisa Fine, Ellen Hunt, and Hemma Lomax, and we're going to talk about the current state of compliance because we're all at Compliance Week 2025, and obviously that's an important topic of the conference. And Lisa.
Yes.
I'm going to start with you since you're clockwise next to me.
All right.
Maybe I want to start with the vibe, as my 27-year-old daughter would say. It's all about the vibe.
It's about the vibe.
It's about the vibe.
It's about the vibe. To help your 27-year-old daughter, it is not sus. It is very good.
So tell us the vibe you're feeling.
I'm feeling a very strong sense of community. I think I'm a little bit just overly feeling a lot of energy from the way we started yesterday and the women's kickoff brunch. It was very audience engaged, women, men, allies, everybody talking about real concerns about how to best network, get to know the community and others. And I think in a lot of ways that theme has gone throughout the week. You're meeting different people and getting their views on a lot of stuff. I think that part of the vibe is fabulous. I also think everyone loves being back at the Mayflower.
Ellen,
Tom,
what's your vibe?
I think it's very uplifting. People are enjoying being back at the Mayflower. And I think that this community is always so giving and supportive of one another. Everything that Lisa said about the women's brunch, but also every other session. I just think it is about networking, sharing ideas, and being supportive of one another.
Hemma?
100% on that theme. I would say the vibe is in this together. And one thing I'm noticing is people are doing hard things. They want to do them well, and they do them better together. And so certainly I have lots and lots of conversations with people inside and outside the session about what they're handling now. And we'll talk about that more, what we're all facing when it comes to compliance, and how they're handling it with the support of each other and how they're getting ideas and ideation and collaboration from events like this. So I'm really thrilled to be part of that.
We had on Tuesday an opening keynote by Kenneth Polite, formerly with the Department of Justice and now in private practice. And he spoke about an opportunity that we are at a point of compliance where there's an opportunity. And I think he said, with uncertainty brings an opportunity for growth. I will not presume to know you all well enough to know any opportunities for growth you may have experienced in your life, but I will speak to mine. And when there has been uncertainty, there has been opportunity for growth. It's whether you take that opportunity for growth. Wei Chin said around a day or two after the president's executive order suspending FCPA investigation and enforcement that compliance needs to up their game. And she said we need to up our game by re-emphasizing the ethics and compliance. I've heard Vince Walden say or Matt Galvin, I should say, that we're at an inflection point. And I have said the same thing in my latest book, but I really wanted to maybe get a sense from each one of you all. I think we are at a point, and we will have to dig deep and have some professional growth. And maybe how do you see it? Because we may all see it differently, but we all may be going back to the same place. So Lisa, is there any opportunity you either see or you want to see from us?
I think there is always opportunities. It didn't take this to get to this inflection point. I think if people we're only talking about compliance as compliance and not the importance of ethical decision-making and doing the right thing before the executive orders, maybe that will spur that. But I think that it pushes us to go further in the direction that many of us were already heading. And I think that it's important to continue that because no matter what, for us, you mentioned so many esteemed leaders in our field. For our day-to-day colleagues, they just want to know how to do the right thing and what we're supposed to do in the company. And even if they're wondering what's happening, they're also not thinking, oh, great, now today I can go start doing bribes. It's that people want to do the right thing. I think it's important. I think institutions are important and consistency, but we should always be digging deep on this and always taking that opportunity.
Ellen, could I overlay with you? You are our representative vendor. But I wanted to introduce that to ask, what kind of questions, if any, are you getting? Are you having these conversations with folks you're doing work with, work for? I assume you're having internally, but how are you having those conversations beyond your great skill of listening?
Absolutely. Everybody is thinking about how do they work smart? What do they do? Some of our clients are manufacturing companies who are very much impacted by the tariffs, very much in a whirlwind of are they on, are they off? And what does that mean for their budgets? So I'm seeing a lot of people get very focused on what is the greatest risk? What is the best and most efficient thing they can do about it? How do they do that and use their resources effectively? And I'm seeing people be brave and really come out and say, these are the things we need to do to keep the culture strong, because that's what's going to help us survive no matter what the impact of the tariffs are. Lots of great conversations and a lot of courage.
And Hemma, you actually just started a new job.
I did.
And what's it like to walk in that door at this point in time for compliance?
I feel like the luckiest girl in the world. To your point, there's a lot of opportunity, and what a great time to take the helm at any corporation right now, where people are asking a lot of questions. The flip side of that is we get to answer some of those questions. We think about the answers and think deeply, and also look at root causes of the questions. Like what's underlying that question, and what have been the fears and insecurities that have caused that question to surface up right now? And what can we do to lay the foundation for a better way forward? Yeah, whether in my current job, my new job, I should say, whether in the compliance community, we've got some hard and tough questions to answer. I love the question about will compliance survive? So what's causing that question? And it does give us a chance to double down on what we are and what we stand for. Lisa Miller, a former DOJ representative, spoke yesterday, and she talked about how important it was to think about what you stand for as a company. Are you the kind of company that just flexes in the wind within an administration, or do you have values that are deep-rooted that you'll be leaning in on at this point? So I think that was a really great point. The other opportunity I'll say is, and she said this too, this is not the time to put your pens down and wait. This is actually the time to show that in a time of uncertainty, you were just doing the good work. You were actually laying the foundation. So I'm very excited for the profession. I'm very excited for myself and my new team and the new company I'm at, that we get to experiment with that as well, and just reinforcing the culture and really deep foundations.
Let me change the focus a little bit. I teach a summer class on compliance at Case Western Law School. And in the past, the class has been focused around the FCPA and compliance with that, expanded out into the other areas of compliance. The question I would pose to each one of you, if you were speaking to my class of largely JDs, but some MBAs and the sprinkling of undergrads, what would you tell them about why they should go into compliance? Because I think my message from last year may change a little bit this year. Any thoughts on that, Lisa?
I think it's a fabulous field no matter when you join it. I think one of the challenges, if you're talking about what messaging from the FCPA, there's a whole part of this that makes it so much more global in some ways than it ever was before. So much going on in the UK right now, the EU, all the different states. It's a sort of an intellectual exercise right now. Some of that is absolutely fascinating, and a reminder that the world as a whole isn't going to try to avoid corruption. And even if there's a pause in one place, others step up. There's so much opportunity in that area. And like I said, I find it so interesting to see how other places are responding, whether it's tariffs, trade, sanctions, anti-corruption, anti-bribery. I think that there are all of those different areas. And it is a reminder that these things all matter. And we're making a mistake always if we're too U.S. centric. It's a whole world. It's a great opportunity.
Ellen.
Professor Fox, I will be teaching this summer as well. And my class is focused on business ethics and ethics decision-making. And what I would say to your students is, it doesn't matter what organization you work for, you always need to make solid, good, ethical business decisions. It is the only real ingredient, in addition to a quality product, that gives you success.
Hemma?
Ellen stole that right out of my mouth. Decision-making is everything, and I think that's one thing to get excited about. So I had three things. Ellen did number one, I'll do number two and number three. And number two, aligned with the decision-making, is the human behavioral point about that and what you can do around that and how you can understand what drives decisions, ethical or not. We had a fabulous session with Ron Carucci here in DC yesterday, and he really talked about the kind of coaching mentality where you think, why are people making those decisions? What war are they revisiting in their past that's making them show up in that way today? So my number 2 point was to maybe invite him as a guest lecturer on your course. And my number 3 point was to get your students to read your book, Upping Your Game, because gosh, what an exciting time to be in compliance where we need to prepare all businesses for the future. We need to prepare for that decision making using the technology that's available to us. So it's definitely a game changer. I've said before, your book is very important. It is leveling the playoff field to a completely different height. And I recommend that you put that on the reading list, Tom.
Lisa, you've given us our next topic, and that's the international aspect of compliance. You mentioned specifically the United Kingdom and the SFO, and you named Europe as well. But there are multiple major countries in the world that have anti-corruption or compliance laws on the books. And what was interesting about the first month after the executive order came down, I did a webinar for Brazil and one for Hong Kong. And their questions were, who's going to lead this if America doesn't? And I didn't say this, but I thought, you're going to lead it. Hong Kong, you're going to lead this, Brazil. And it seems that the rest of the world has now realized that. And so you spoke to the multidimensional aspects of this. Could you maybe give us a little bit more on why you see or how you see the rest of the world picking this up?
One way is a little bit cynical almost as someone if you're in a U.S. organization, is that the United States did lead this for a very long time. And there was a significant and continues to be, and I heard that yesterday in Carrie Penman and Jane and Lisa's panel as well, that a huge number of the tips that have come to the U.S. and are from other countries, and a lot of our settlements and all of the money that they were making for many years came from other countries. So if those countries are now forced to take the lead, I have a pretty good guess of what companies they're going to be looking at most critically first. And I will say it's not their local ones. So I think that from a global standpoint is worth recognizing. So I think that is one part of it. I think it's also interesting to see organizations like the SFO, who have had some challenges in the past, I think looking at this as their moment to shine. So I think from a regulatory standpoint, and frankly, I think that follows the cultural one that we've all been talking about for many years. In some countries, your word is your bond. You shouldn't have to write things. We've always had people write. That's what our culture and organizational culture is. So we're catching up to understanding and training on more and more cultural sensitivities and work collaborating. So that's where I see the multinational aspect of it.
Ellen, how about we had an announcement from the California Attorney General that California will look at this issue from their own state law perspective. Could you see potential state AGs? Oh, and the other thing I heard yesterday was, I think from one of either Jane or Lisa, was that multiple DOJ prosecutors have gone to state AG's office to bring that expertise. So could you see California, New York, or maybe some other states start to take a look at this?
Yeah, whenever there's a vacuum, it gets filled. And depending upon what's going to happen with the budget and how things are being pushed to the state, they're going to need to raise revenue. So I absolutely see certain states becoming very sophisticated and very involved. And I think we're going to see some innovation in this area that we haven't ever seen before. We kind of have the playbook. It's been the way it's been for a long time. And I think we're going to see the states do some really very interesting things.
I want to draw on your academic background a little bit because you went to university, not in the United States. And do you see the academic, not really atmosphere, but the academic rigor around some of these issues in the United States? Do you see that in the United Kingdom or perhaps some other countries where there's a serious academic study of business ethics, of compliance, or of just the enforcement of these laws?
Yeah, and for sure it varies. Like as you said, I studied in the UK, I did law school in the United Kingdom, and I was certainly fully aware of the issues and looking for solutions. In fact, the precise reason that I came to the US was because you all were doing such a good job on anti-corruption enforcement. It's precisely what I was doing. I was working in London, the Parliamentary Council office, where the Bribery Act was just being drafted. And that moment in time, I thought, gosh, we need to learn how to do this. There was no dispute that it was necessary. The what was not in dispute. I think that remains the case today. Around the world, countries believe that this needs to be thought of carefully. But the how, that's where you all led. That's where the US led. And so I think back to your other question, there may be a vacuum, but you've got a lot of talent out there who are waiting to take the good lessons that myself, I've learned a lot about anti-corruption enforcement right here in the US. And I think there's global mobility for talent. I think people will be looking for that talent around the world now to make sure they can bring those skills to bear across the world. So yes, the academic rigor varies for sure, but certainly there's no lack of seriousness about the issue and the impacts. A lot of the stories I was brought up with were the stories of buildings and bridges collapsing and really tragic events, the actual real impacts of corruption. And so certainly lots of NGO push, lots of governmental rigor around wanting to do something, but the effectiveness has not been there. So I'll go back to what you said, Ellen. This is the time. This is the opportunity for innovation. It's good that the globe wants to step up. I hope they do. I hope they use this moment in time to find their resources and leverage the talents, because back to your question, the academic discourse is strong, but the practical implementation is lacking, and that's where we come in.
I'm going to pick up on your point, Ellen, the nature of horrors of vacuum. Lisa, your point that if governments outside the United States are looking at compliance or corruption-related issues, they may be more willing in the current political and economic environment to target U.S. companies. And then I want to add one other thing, which is, I think starting in about 2010, the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission started putting on training for foreign prosecutors in anti-corruption and money laundering, perhaps not so much export control or sanctions. But nevertheless, Kara Brockmeyer told me once there was a week-long summit in the United States where they brought prosecutors from Brazil, prosecutors from England. And then 5 years later, they did it again. And this included prosecutors from France, prosecutors from Spain, Germany. And so the U.S. enforcement agencies or the Department of Justice really put on training for anti-corruption specialists across the globe. And I think that training, coupled with these other factors, may really bear fruit for democratizing the enforcement of ABC or AML or any of the other kind of traditional compliance units. So maybe let's turn to some practical advice, and we're going to flip the script by starting with Hemma. But Hemma, when you go back to the office Thursday, what are you going to be thinking about, and maybe what are you going to be thinking about in terms of practical ideas that you will talk about or try to implement?
Yes, there's so many good ideas that have been surfacing from the conversations here at the conference. In fact, there were a number of events last night where we carried on the conversations from the sessions. And I just got some great ideas that I hope I can steal. So I'll give you an example. I spoke to Stephanie from Volkswagen, and she was telling us how she does a compliance chronicle, where she takes some facts from investigations that have taken place at the company and anonymizes them and mixes them up a bit, and then has kind of a Gossip Girl style chronicle using the one-where episode where something happened, and puts those out. And she says she gets 80% open rate on it. It's just amazing. So just a really creative idea that I'd love to see if I can implement. That was number one. And there was a gentleman from KPMG that was telling me how they have a podcast internally, and they go about finding people that spoke up and having the people that spoke up tell the stories of speaking up and the impact it had to encourage a speak up culture. So just another really powerful idea, using the podcasting in a very creative way. There's two examples of just ideas that generated from conversations that I'd love to see if I can't implement when I get back to the office.
I can help you with a podcast.
There we go.
Ellen, how about you?
Wow. There's all kinds of ideas going through my head, but I think I am enthused and optimistic about the idea of getting to that next level and moving the profession forward. So what I think is key is that it is continuing to foster, teach on ethical decision-making. How do people do that? But with that is also organizational justice, right? The organization has to treat people fairly, and that means you don't retaliate against them when they do come forward. Also the idea of psychological safety, right? That people need to be able to feel comfortable when they are concerned or they've made a mistake, or they just have to talk things through because they're not sure if something's right or wrong. And so I'm going to continue to talk to my clients about all of those.
How about you, Lisa?
Those are all some of the fabulous take-homes that we've gotten. One of the other ones, a little bit different, is about some creative ways of doing micro-learning or engagement, the small questions, the let's give everything in bite size. I always learn new and interesting ways to try to do that. And I think I got some really great ideas on how to keep integrating what we're trying to do into the larger messages of our organizations. So I think that those were two things that have come out of the learning. And I think, like you said, we've been talking about a lot when it comes to focusing a little more on ethics than compliance. And then we got some really great ways of doing that day to day. And that goes back to the point of bringing it into your company or trying to help engage in a more multifunctional way. And I feel like we've changed and we're evolving in the compliance, ethics and compliance community, where we are working on talking the language of others in our businesses.
So I'm going to end by not with a lightning round, but asking each one of you for one or two or three, whatever you think is appropriate, sort of positive takeaways, opportunities, or something that we could leave the audience with about us leaving Compliance Week 2025 and what we're feeling. And so you have time to think. I'll start.
Okay.
I have fully appreciated having this discussion about what do we do next. And I think you were spot on, Lisa, when you very gently corrected me and said, Tom, we're not thinking about those now. We've always been thinking about those. But now we were given an opportunity with Trump's executive order to say, where do we, and the collective we, take compliance next? Is it a reemphasis on ethics? Is it an integration of compliance into business operations? Is it a technological solution? Is it determining greater and more effectiveness through a tech tool, whether it's AI or some other method? Whatever it is, at this point, there's no right or no wrong, and we can each implement those in our own way, in our own companies. But this podcast interview I heard Matt Kelly do with Wei Chen in 2017 has always stuck with me, because she said she wrote the original evaluation of corporate compliance programs questions. And she said they were designed to get compliance officers to think. And I think right now we're all thinking, and everyone's thinking, and the panelists are thinking, and us in the audience are thinking about what they're thinking about, and we're all thinking, and who knows what the answer is. It may be all of the above, it may be none of the above, but I know we're all thinking about where do we take this profession next. So that's the biggest takeaway for me, is that everyone is taking this opportunity. No one is saying, poor pitiful me, what am I going to do next? Everyone's saying, okay, what are we going to do next? Lisa, what are your takeaways?
First of all, I was not gently correcting you. I'm just giving you my philosophy on how I've been trying to do this for a while and hoping that it'll work. But I think the biggest thing that I get from this and any of the times we come this is this sense of community and respect for viewpoints and perspectives and for learning from each other. I think it is extraordinary. I think it's the reason that so many of us stay in this job, even when it's frustrating. Yes, we're thinking, but we're actually thinking about why we exist, which is sometimes can be a challenging thought or conversation. But you get in a group like this and you just get energized and engaged all over again of this is important. We are helping. We are doing a really good thing that can be really hard. But look at all these fabulous people around me that I can even talk to and get course corrected or advice. So that to me is what I think is my takeaway, and just makes me so optimistic.
Ellen?
Yeah, I just say be brave. Here's our opportunity. It's a brand new horizon. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and here's the time to take every shot you can.
Emma?
I'd kind of like to bring us back full circle to the beginning of the sessions yesterday when we had the brunch. Lisa and I with Nick did a women's compliance brunch. And one of the things that came across to me was that there's a lot of good things happening, but people are still suffering on their own in silence. And what that brunch conversation gave us was an opportunity to see that, rise to it, and reach out to each other. So I know we do a lot of work speaking to the community, but it really just reinforced what we do and how it's really necessary. And it can't just be us. Everyone needs to do it, because we do a really hard job. And we talk a lot about the wins, but we don't talk about the difficult things, the real challenges that we have when we're back in our jobs and back in our offices. And so I say that by way of positivity. we are doing the right thing. We need to keep doing that, be here for each other, turn up to these conferences, show up for each other, because you just don't know who needs that conversation, that reassuring bit of advice. So that's my takeaway.
Ladies, this has been a great time for us to get together. Thank you so much for allowing me to visit with you all for a cross-posted GWIC and FCPA Compliance Report podcast.
Thank you.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network. Available wherever you listen to podcasts.